Hi, folks. Before we begin, please be aware that we are recording this webinar. If you have any questions about the resources, we encourage you to follow up via email at support@electionsgroup.com. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Annie, and I'm an election expert with the Elections Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm the Communications and Program Manager here at the Elections Group.
For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Elections Group is an election administration consulting firm. We partner with state and local election officials to implement new programs or improve processes for voters and stakeholders. We provide guidance, resources, and direct management support for jurisdictions. Our team is made up of former election officials and election experts from across the United States. We're pleased to have you all with us today for our next highlight of resources for the election administration community. Each week, we'll showcase resources from the Elections Group paired with resources from other organizations in the election space. Every 4 weeks, we'll focus on a different topic and we'll take a deeper dive into the resources available each week.
This month, we will focus on election workers and observers. And this week, we are highlighting the Election Group's shared expectations for meaningful election observation. And today, I'm excited to announce we have Roki Sulman from the Carter Center to talk about their pilot observation program. Roki, I will pass it to you to introduce yourself and get right into your resources.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Hi, my name is Roki Sulman. I'm a consultant with the Carter Center, and the Carter Center has been developing a resource for internal U.S. election observation, and what I will do is I'll share our program with you. So let me get started here. Oh. Share. And, bear with me a second. Okay. Election observation, bringing an international practice to the United States. The Carter Center is guided by the principles of our founders, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. We were founded in partnership with Emory University under the fundamental commitment to human rights and the alleviation of human suffering. The center seeks to present, resolve conflicts, enhance freedom and democracy, and improve health. The Carter Center has conducted over 120 full and limited observation missions in 40 countries around the globe. And we've also done observation missions in 3 Native American nations here in the United States. In addition, we've done 17 expert missions, which are just missions with a short staff instead of a large-term observation group in 15 countries. Why do election observation in the United States? Election observation can lead to increased trust and transparency in elections. Unfortunately, in the past decade, we've seen an erosion of trust in U.S. elections. So what the Carter Center has decided to do is take its practices and learned practices from around the globe and bring them to the United States to enhance transparency in elections and build confidence. We hope to do this through a foundation of data and evidence to support reforms when warranted. We hope to speak to the process of the election, not the outcome. We're not concerned about who wins or loses in these observation missions. What we are concerned about is that the process runs smoothly. We also want to provide a needed third voice in a space otherwise dominated by political parties and medias. There's been a history in the United States of election observation, but done on a partisan level, meaning the political parties will observe elections, but they're observing those elections solely under the guise of their own lens. What we're hoping to do is open that up to third voices, regular citizens, and educate the media on what an election observation should be. Challenges with elections observation in the United States. Unlike other countries, the elections administration is decentralized in the United States. There's no central election administration. Elections are run by the 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia, as well as the territories of Puerto Rico, Samoa, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Mariana Islands. Also, because of that decentralization, the legal framework is completely different. Some states allow observers in varying capacities, others do not. You'll find that in some states, citizens observers are allowed in, but international observers are not. In other states, no citizen observers. You have to be a political poll watcher. So what we're doing is right now we're trying to grow our observation missions in states that will allow this capacity of citizen observation, and then hopefully energize some changes in legislation moving forward to allow this in every state across the country. Elections administrators' previous experiences with observers are more likely to have been with the partisan observers that I've been talking about. And those seem to be gotcha exercises. Election administrators, and I understand this as having had observation observers myself when I was in Washington, D.C., sometimes election administrators think that this is a gotcha exercise and that you're just there to point out minor flaws and say that the elections are mismanaged. That is not our goal here with election observation. Although we may point out factors that we see that can be improved, the idea is to have a nonpartisan look at elections administration in the United States to ensure that it's meeting the will of the voters. Our strategy in response to these is to grow cross-partisan relationships in jurisdictions. We'd like to find like-minded people who they may disagree politically, share a desire to increase electoral trust. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to both Democrat and Republican folks and creating a cross-partisan / bipartisan organization that will put their party hats aside and look at the elections through the lens of a U.S. citizen. We also want to cultivate relationships with elections administrators. Doing so will open up the process to allow citizens to see the process internally, which will grow greater transparency. And it will also allow election administrators to feel comfortable with the process and understand that any issues that may be found on election day are reasons for improvement, which sometimes as an election administrator, you don't always get to see from the outside. Currently, we're operating in states with clear legal openings for and past precedent of independent observation, and we are adapting our observation methodology to local election conditions. What we mean by that is that because elections are decentralized in the United States, everything is handled at basically a county or a township level. And although even in some states you'll have a uniform election system, each county may do things differently. And we had a situation recently in one of our groups in Montana where we based our observation forms on our first pilot in Missoula, Montana. But then as we were reaching out to other counties in Montana, we realized that some of those folks said, we don't do things this way. We do it this way. And we don't like that question on the form because it's going to say no. And then we're going to feel that we're going to be dinged for a bad practice. So what we do is we like to work with the elections officials to understand the processes well before election day and then cultivate our forms to meet their processes. Our objective with the Carter Center is to increase the public trust in elections. We want to demonstrate with objective data where elections are well conducted and point out deficiencies if and when they occur. And we want to communicate to elections officials and media about the operation and methodology. And we're doing that beforehand so that when we do release our reports, both elections officials and media are comfortable with our methodology and are happy to report our results. We want to build capacity among citizens groups for self-run observation missions. That's important because we want this to end up growing organically, and we want citizen groups to form across the country, and then we will give them the tools in which to build their own election observation mission. And as I said earlier, we want to adapt the observation methodology to local electoral geography and match what is going on at the local level. The Carter Center is currently assisting with 3 observation missions in the United States. We have our Montana Election Observation Mission, our Observe New Mexico elections, and we're also in partnership with a monitoring group in Fulton County to do the election observation mission in Fulton County. We are also going to be observing in Georgia the risk limiting audit in as many counties as possible in Georgia post-election. What we plan to do with all of this is we're planning on producing some resources coming out in the first quarter next year. We want to produce a partisan poll watcher toolkit to give to partisan poll watchers so that they understand how they should react in an observation mission and what they should be looking for and how to work with elections officials to kind of tamp down any sort of issues they may have. We're also going to issue 3 nonpartisan observation guides. One is a very comprehensive nonpartisan election observation guide that is going to detail everything you need to know about an election observation mission. We're going to do a toolkit that is a miniature version that will just teach a group of folks how to do forms, how to create forms, and how to work with data collection. And then the compendium is going to be a combination of the two, the guide and the toolkit, that is going to be a medium-sized document that will lay out the basics of how to create an election observation mission, what kind of personnel you need, what kind of tools you'll need to communicate, how to get the data from the election observers into the central form, and then what you need to do to work with the media, to work with elections officials, and also how to produce reports at the end that can be viewed by the citizens. We're due to release these in the first quarter next year after our evaluation of our pilots and our lessons learned. We're looking forward to this. We've done our pilot in Montana in June, went very, very, very well, and we've expanded it to almost all of the counties in Montana. Plus, we have a very robust mission going in New Mexico, and we're very much looking forward to speaking about this post-election with all of our successes. So that's what we have at the Carter Center. That's what we're hoping to do. We're looking to take our lessons learned from this year and potentially grow into a state or two next year in 2025, and then potentially grow this in the election cycles in 2026 and 2028 to give a fuller observation of how elections are operating in the United States. And again, it's really to build citizen transparency and trust and confidence in our elections. We're hoping to stop that erosion. And thanks very much for letting me present.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Roki. We're excited to see what the future holds for this program. Alrighty, so we are going to go ahead and get into our final resources today. We have a resource from the elections group, which is always fun. We're going to go ahead and get into that first. So today I'm going to be discussing the shared expectations for meaningful observation resource. This is a great resource. Observers, as many folks on the call know, play an important role in elections by witnessing the process and sharing what they learn with others in their communities. They are individuals appointed or invited to monitor and oversee the electoral process to ensure fairness, transparency, and adherence to democratic principles. Their primary role is to impartially assess the conduct of elections and report any concerns to the main point of contact with the election office. Observers, as defined here, do not include challengers. So we created a set of shared expectations for both election officials and observers. These guidelines will help both election officials and observers fulfill their important roles without an undue burden on election administration. There are many moving parts and tasks that election officials manage, and helping observers understand these moving parts and tasks allows for meaningful and rigorous observation. These expectations can be useful to election officials in a number of ways, including a poster or handout at voting locations and ballot processing facilities. You can also, in your election worker observer training sessions, include something there. We recommend having a code of conduct for your election workers and observers. And then finally, community presentations. Observation is meaningful when observers make good faith efforts to understand the election administration process and also respect the rights of others, especially voters who are participating in that process. However, meaningful observation is not just the responsibility of the observer. It can only happen when election officials provide a vantage point with a comprehensive view of the election process and their security provisions, as well as explanations that provide observers with an understanding of how these provisions should interact to provide interlocking protections. This guide that we're talking about in this document, they're all designed as handouts for election observers. They provide information and helpful context that help observers perform meaningful observation of various election processes. Please download these guides to get started today. And then our In the Wild resource that we wanted to show you is from Contra Costa, California. So Contra Costa, California has implemented an election ambassador program. It is a far-reaching marketing and community engagement campaign that aims to reassure voters of election integrity and security. The campaign includes countywide advertising, nearly 100 community election ambassadors, an informational website, opportunities for the public to observe election activities, and even a certified election official observer program. Elections in Contra Costa are more secure than ever, but the team at Contra Costa wants their voters to know that the comprehensive steps they take to protect their vote. Their election ambassador program does just that. All right, I think that wraps up all of our resources today. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and thank you, Annie and Roki, for a great discussion. Resources that were mentioned in today's discussion have been placed into the chat. And as always, our inbox is open. If you have any additional questions, please email us at support@electionsgroup.com. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.